In this episode, we're showcasing SnapSlide, which is a revolutionary prescription bottle top that meets all child-proof regulatory requirements. So if you find it difficult to twist open those bottles with two hands for any reason, SnapSlide is here to help. So welcome to This is Getting Old, moving towards an age-friendly world. I'm Dr. Melissa Batchelor, and today we're going to be talking with Rocky Batesel, who's the CEO of SnapSlide. So if you're tired of struggling to open prescription bottles, you really need to listen to this week's episode where we're talking about the ultimate solution with SnapSlide. So welcome, Rocky.
Thanks, Melissa. Excited to be here.
So so I'm excited. I always love to hear about innovative solutions, and particularly since I recently broke my hand and 2 years ago broke my wrist and was like, this is something that people struggle with, not just if you have arthritis or you've had a stroke. It really is an age-friendly solution because you could always find yourself in a situation where you can't open a bottle with two hands. So before we get started, maybe just tell us a little bit about you and how you got interested in developing this product.
So I was always a creative thinker. I was always dabbling, trying to create things. And but I got led through a big fan of sciences, went through college, and I wanted to become a doctor. So I got into med school, and about a year into med school, my heart wasn't into it anymore. So it was a tough jump, as changing up what you're doing. So I left medical school. Everybody thought I was crazy. And I just started pursuing entrepreneurial ventures, creating things, and just kind of finding my way, if you will. Until one day, my mother came to me and was like, "Rock, you want to think of something for these pill bottles. Graham can't get into them." She struggled with them. My mom has to go over, open them all for her, and then she leaves the cap on the bottle, on the medicine cabinet. So what does Graham do? He knocks them over. Pills go all over the place, and she gets paranoid when the grandkids come over. So he puts them on again. The whole process starts all over. So I thought that was interesting, and it's one of the few things that hasn't really changed much since the early 70s. Some sort of torque-dependent mechanism that requires a lot of force and dexterity. And as we get older, it's one of those things that happen. We get wisdom, but yet we sacrifice strength and dexterity. And I wanted to remove that. I want to make it much less cumbersome and easier for people to access medications. It's one thing we do every single day, multiple times a day in some cases. And that whole process just needs to be easier. I don't want people needing to depend on others and have a hard time doing it, or even have pain while they're doing it, like my grandmother did. So I just started figuring out what dexterity is needed, the easiest type of forces, the easiest mechanics of human anatomy and physiology, to figure out what's the right mechanism to be able to open this easier so people could access their meds. And it came to me one day, and been a journey ever since, developing it out.
Right. And so I know that 1 in 5 older adults over the age of 65 tend to take on average about 5 different medications. So that's a lot of different pill bottles. And again, it's about the safety issue and helping people maintain their autonomy. So maybe explain a little bit about how it works. And it looks like you have some samples back there. So maybe you can even show us how this works and how it's a little bit different.
100%. So like my grandmother, I started doing research. About 70 million Americans, just in the US alone, have some form of arthritis, some form of physical limitation that prevents them from being able to do this motion, push and turn, or squeeze and turn. Now, you need that two-part mechanism for the child resistance. Critical component, want to keep our children safe, so we need that two-part mechanism to be able to prevent the little ones from getting in. So it was, how do we take a two-part mechanism and make it easier for older folks, but still challenging for children? So what I developed, very simple. It looks like a standard pill bottle, but instead of having to push and turn and take this cap off, you just hit this in this exact spot, and you press it and open it like so. The cap never removes, so you're not juggling the pill, the bottle, and the cap. We got a lot of people telling me that that's something that they have trouble with. Holding on to the cap falls, it goes under the kitchen table or wherever, and you lose it. So I wanted to make the cap not come off, and you close it just as easy, and it snaps shut, so you know that it's closed and engaged. It's funny, all these little nuances. I wanted to make it easier to open, but yet all these other things like the cap not being able to remove. So the auditory snap to ensure that the bottle is closed properly. What I've noticed by talking to a lot of people, it's funny that children don't get into the bottles as much when they're by getting past the CR, but that we don't actually put it on properly. Either we miss the threads and it's not aligned right, or you're just like my grandmother, just don't want to kind of look into the future that, yeah, I don't want to deal with this CR closure again, later. So I'm just going to keep it on the bottle and unengaged. So I wanted that auditory snap to ensure that it's closed. Another interesting thing is there's about 12 million people out there that only have use of one arm, whether it's an amputee, hemiparesis, which is paralysis on one side of the body. 80% of stroke patients have some form of paralysis on one side of the body. Neuromuscular conditions, brachial plexus injury, spinal cord injuries that prevent one-sided motion. So all of these conditions, about 12 million people, not to mention like you, who, you're able-bodied, but if you fall and hurt your arm, then you're out of commission. You're one-handed for 6 to 12 weeks when you're in a cast. So that's another thing, kind of an unmet need that I just found by talking to people and seeing people that are amputees or after a stroke, and how do they access their medication on a daily basis? Well, they have to depend on somebody. And that was one thing I heard a lot, is that independence factor. People don't want to depend on others, to do things for them. So I wanted to take that out of the equation and make it easy for not only my grandmother, who has arthritis, and the 60 million out there who struggle, to the person who had a stroke and has hemiparesis on one side of the body. Accessibility matters.
Well, it really does. And when you think about the number of people impacted, part of what I talk about on my podcast is Alzheimer's disease, but right now that only impacts about 7% of Americans. So when you think about, 12 million with hemiparesis, 60 million with arthritis, that's a huge demographic. So a lot of people impacted. So do you want to talk a little bit about your process, like the process of inventing it, and then we can move into like what your plans are for people to be able to get a SnapSlide top?
Absolutely. So the invention process, quite the journey. It's a story that's shared by not just me, but anybody that ever invents something new. It's a grind. When you come up with something new, it's just the sheer definition of invention. It's never been done before. So how do you do something that's never been done? A lot of trial and error, a lot of trying to figure out what works, what doesn't, and taking what doesn't work and chalking it up as something that, okay, doesn't work. And now you have less options on what does,
Mm-hmm.
So I came up with the idea, and I was a medical student, didn't know anything about patents or development. So how to find the right people, a lot of people along the way up, it can't be done. It can never be patented. All of these, you get a lot of resistance along the way. Then just fighting through. So I found my patent attorney who helped me develop the patents and did a full international and domestic patent search and realized there's nothing similar. There's all packages have been revolving around a torque-dependent motion for over 50 years. So once we discovered that, we were able to kind of carve out a solid patent estate and kind of fill it with all of these patents, all these iterations around it, all the engineering and development we do. We grow this patent estate and then mix that with the development of it. I don't like to like sit inside a bubble and like, I think this will be good. I like to get out and just talk to random people. I started just going to the grocery stores and asking people, you guys know travel resistant clothes, those pill bottles? Oh yeah. What do you guys think about them? And the general consensus is once you think, I don't like them. I hate those things. Like, okay, what could try this? And they do it, and they're like, oh yeah, this is better, this is easier. And then get their thoughts on it. So it'd be nice if the cap doesn't remove. All right, so implement that in snap sound, all these different things until you finally get the final and go from there.
So we were just going over SnapSlide product and how it works. So if you have any questions, you can drop those in the chat, and we'll take those questions too. So just to recap, Rocky Batesel is the CEO of SnapSlide, and it's a top replacement for prescription, the traditional kind of press and what do you call it? You had a term for it.
The push and turn.
Yeah, push and turn.
Press and slide.
Yes.
We're getting rid of torque. No more torque and no more turning things.
Exactly. And so, all right, so let's talk a little bit, move now into kind of what your plans are to get this out to the public.
So after developing it, took a long time to develop it out because it needs to be, you always make something more complicated, some more, a lot of techie stuff. You could probably make a bottle that has a retinal scan that opens it, but that's too complicated. There's about 4 billion prescription vials in the US alone, which means that volume and that price point, low price point, high volume. So it needs to be manufactured at a high rate, high speed. So it needs to be simple. So the mechanics of this need to be very simple, use a lot less plastic, be able to rev off the production lines very fast. So a lot of development went into making this as simple as possible. So there's no burden in terms of financial burden in terms for the companies who are bringing it on, but yes, still consumer friendly for the average person who's using them on a regular basis. So that's where we spent a lot of time and resources into developing out the fundamentals for production and consumer accessibility. So currently we have our final products. We're working with partners and on the wholesale distribution side and also the pharmacies across the country to bring it into their stores. And we're revving up the production. I'd like to be fully ramped up in production by early Q1 of 2025. So it takes a lot of time to rev up these tools to be able to produce this sort of volume. So I'd like to be ready to go on Q1 and getting SnapSlides to all the pharmacies across the country.
And then we talked a little bit about how people could help you with making pharmacies aware that this is even something that exists. Since it's not like direct consumer, that people can't purchase it directly right now. But when they go to the pharmacy, if they have any issues with opening the top of the bottle, that they can start to request SnapSlide while you're working on getting this into all the major pharmacies.
That's one of the interesting things. It's not a consumer product. So consumers can't buy it, but it's a product that they use on the regular every day. Whether it's your prescription or even your over-the-counter drugs, everybody on a daily basis is operating some sort of torque-dependent mechanism, And it's when you're dealing with this, when I first started, when I was on stealth mode, I was approaching all these companies and they're like, there's no problem. We're scaled up already. And I just didn't accept that as a reason, as a why you shouldn't do it. So after we got done, we did a lot of consumer facing stuff. We launched Facebook, and since that, it's been shows that maybe these companies, maybe they're not, maybe there is a problem. The embrace has been significant. A lot of people already have up to 20,000 followers on Facebook. The reaction has been overwhelming, and going to shows, putting SnapSlides into the hands of those consumers that are less fortunate, those with amputees, hemiplegia, even cerebral palsy. One of the best moments, I was at Abilities Expo in New York, and I gave SnapSlide to a girl that has cerebral palsy, and she was playing with it a little bit. There's a slight learning curve on it that helped the child resistance, and then she got it open, and her face lit up. I'm like, oh my God. It was the first time she was ever able to open a child-resistant closure in her life. And even her parents were ecstatic about it, because now they see her daughter able to do something that they don't have to do for her anymore. And it was just a real touching, memorable experience for me that somehow I'll never forget. It's the wind at the back, you know,
Right.
it's in the sails.
Well, and it also speaks to the fact that this is an age-friendly product solution, because when things are age-friendly, they're friendly for everyone. So, you know, if you have that ability to use this type of opening or top for your prescription medications as a younger person, it benefits that age group. You know, it benefits older adults and the people in the middle that maybe end up having kind of temporary needs to use this type of top. So
100%. I got somebody come to the office, and he comes in and he's like, "Yo, can I get a couple SnapSlides?" And he was telling me his story, and he saw us because last week he's like, my wife had shoulder surgery, and she was in a sling, and when he was at work, his wife couldn't get into her medication, so she had to walk all the way to the neighbor's house, had the neighbors open the bottle for her so she could take it. And it was just funny. He encountered us about a week later. He's like, "I gotta go get a couple of these SnapSlides." So he came to the office. I gave him a bunch of them, and it was another like, whoa, there's a lot of people out there that struggle to open these, and so a new solution needs to happen. Can't stop progress. Got to prevail.
all right, so let's talk about now like where people can find you, and congrats on that many followers on Facebook. That's awesome. So they can go to your website, which is, you know, snapslide.com. So snapslide.com. And then what social media platforms are you on besides Facebook? Or is it just
Facebook's our big one, SnapSlide, and then SnapSlide Packaging on Instagram, and we have a YouTube, just SnapSlide. So everything SnapSlide except for Instagram. That was a little different. SnapSlide Packaging.
Yeah, that's funny. Same with me. I'm MelissaBPhD everywhere except Instagram, and it's MelissaBPhD_ the nurse.
Another cool thing is when you invent something, there's ability to solve other problems that you may not have been thinking of at the time. And an interesting thing we encountered is torque. As you know, when you're screwing something off, it has threads, right? You need those layers of threads on both the bottle and the cap. So since we're no longer engaging torque anymore, we're able to remove all those threads. And it saves about 1.5 grams worth of plastic per bottle. So when you're talking about 1.5 grams for 4 billion bottles out there, translates to about 25 million pounds of plastic annually. There's a lot of cost savings and a lot of big environmental impact.
Yeah, I was going to say the sustainability piece. Yeah, protecting the environment is very important.
Less. So sometimes the planets line up when a lot of times they don't, a lot of trial and error, but a lot of times when you're figuring something out, something else comes in there. Oh, that's actually a positive. Awesome. So every now and then you get the planets do line up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you think about the number of products that you have to turn. I mean, I'm thinking about, you know, mouthwash and, you know, other products even in your bathroom. You know, if there was an alternate top that you don't have to twist off, you know.
They will wash.
Yeah, it's the same. So that way, otherwise you got to use your knees Like, try to.
Yep.
try to
A lot
open-
of people put in their mouth. It's another funny you mentioned that. I ask people, so what's your technique? You know, especially like if you only have one arm. I'm always interested to see how like people figure that out. And a lot of people put them in the mouth. They press in and they turn it. You know, a lot of times they put it between their knees. They turn it off, like you said. So a lot of kind of ingenious ways to get around this issue.
Right. Well, I'm glad you've come up with a solution that will protect our teeth.
Yeah.
And allow people to be more independent and autonomous. So, well, thank you very much for being with me today. I'd like to thank the AgeWiseU MVP members that joined us as well. And again, can go to SnapSlide.com. Is that right?
SnapSlide.com.
All right.
And I'm on LinkedIn too. I always love comments or messages. Always get back to you. So I always like to get people's thoughts. I'm always, like I said, I can't sit in a bubble. So I like to hear what people have to say. So feel free to reach out.
So thank you for joining me today. Please don't forget to go to my website, MelissaBPhD.com/join, and you can sign up to be an AgeWiseU Insider or MVP member. You can also become a member on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you're joining me from today. If you have found this information helpful, please like it, leave a 5-star rating and a comment if you'd like, or just share the episode with someone that you think would find it helpful. Until next time, be well.